Okay, welcome everyone to our careers on working with the dead. Today we have with us Kevin Schrodinger. Am I saying that right?
Jettinger.
Kevin Schrodinger of Schrodinger Funeral Services, President, Jay Moffett of Moffett Embalming Services, and Jeff White of Archaeology. Can you dig it? I just want to make a quick announcement before we start talking today. Today's career panel is all about people that work with humans after death. So it's a very sensitive topic. It can be hard to talk about. If you start feeling anxious or sad at any point throughout this career panel, that's your cue to maybe step out for a moment, get a drink of water, and decide if you want to come back and listen more. Totally no judgment. This is just a space for everyone to learn more about the industry. So let's get started. Will you folks just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your average day looks like in your current role? Jeff, do you want to start?
Sure. So my name is obviously again Jeff White. I am an archaeologist, anthropologist, archaeologist. I worked as an archaeologist for over 20 years. I also developed this business called Archaeology Can You Dig It, which is an archaeological outreach youth program. So in the field of archaeology, obviously I work at the library as well, but in the field of archaeology, that kind of entails a lot of things for us. Depends on if we're working in the lab or if we're actually working in the field. There's three different phases of archaeology as to working in the field: phase one, phase two, phase three. So phase one is more like a survey where we're covering a map and covering some areas, looking for artifacts, seeing if it's going to be a site that will lead to mitigation, which is a phase three. Two, you can imagine that's kind of in between that, where we're opening up some units, not just surveying. And then phase three is a full-on mitigation of a site. So all those involve digging and researching artifacts and filling out all the paperwork and everything that goes with that. So all those things kind of go into archaeology before artifacts hit the lab, and we write about them and research them also.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. Jay, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what your average day looks like in your current role?
Well, as a trade embalmer, I work for a number of different funeral homes in the Columbus, Central Ohio area. I also have a home base, which I rent from another funeral home here locally. So I travel a lot back and forth between different funeral home accounts, caring for folks with embalming, dressing and casketing, cosmetics. So the days are quite varied, depending on who has what cases, who does not have folks in. Sometimes it's going back and checking other cases that we've worked with, and checking in. So, like I said, it's a varied day. I can leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning and get home at 3 o'clock in the morning, or it can be a day where I'm at home with my dogs all day. So it all depends on uh, uh, because folks don't die on a clock, and they even though the hospitals and the coroner's office try to keep us on their schedule, uh, people go when it's their time, and so we have to respond at many different times of the day and night.
Yeah. How quickly do you typically respond when you get a phone call?
It usually I try to be there within an hour or two to the
Wow.
funeral home, but is again, sometimes the hospitals they don't release folks sometimes for 4 to 8 hours. A nursing home is or a home call where when people do die at home, those are a little bit faster.
Sure.
Sometimes the family hasn't made up their mind what they want to do,
Mhm.
so there's delay there. But we try to be there as soon as possible
Yeah.
to care for the person as soon as possible is the best way to do it.
And what is the most that you've done in a day? Have you?
13 in an 18-hour period.
How many?
13 in a 24-hour
13.
period.
Wow. 13 in a 24-hour period.
Yeah, last month I did in a 5-day period. I did 22, so that tells you how it,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
how it can go. Eight, 9 in a day is a big day. It's a
Yeah.
long day, but
Yeah.
it happens.
Wow. Thank you so much. And Kevin, do you want to tell us a little bit about your current role and what does your average day look like?
So, Kevin Schrodinger, I'm a sixth generation funeral director. Our family's been doing funeral service. This is 170 years this year. Um, in terms of my primary roles are in our company are actually kind of managing the company itself. But there was a time when I was a frontline funeral director where I'd sit down, meet with families, make funeral arrangements, coordinate funeral services, which, for lack of a better word, the closest thing that we do when we're creating funerals is like creating a wedding. We do about all the same things that a wedding coordinator would do, except we do it in about 3 days versus planning that out for 9 months a year. And then actually delivering funeral services. So setting up chairs, setting up the room, placing flowers, um, setting up photos, greeting families, making sure that every detail of that service is perfect for that family. And that also includes maybe driving a hearse or funeral coach to the cemetery and being present with the family while they're saying goodbye to their loved one for the last time. So yeah, days can look very, very differently just depending on, well, the number of deaths can vary widely. It's not steady. It's not, regular. It's, sometimes you've got a lot going on, sometimes you don't. But uh, most of my frontline funeral director days, it was meeting with families, doing all the behind the scenes ordering of all the things that need to happen, talking to all the people that are going to be involved, and just making sure all those details get executed.
A lot of work, I'm sure. Yeah. So this would be a good question to roll into with you as a sixth generation funeral director. Did you know that you wanted to work in this career when you were a teen? Can you talk a little bit about how you ended up here? Yeah, did you ever not want to be a part of the family business?
Yeah, so for me, it was first grade. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I said funeral director. Fortunately, no kids knew what that meant at the
Yeah,
time, to even
yeah.
make fun of me for it.
I
But
imagine the teachers were like, all right, yeah,
well, it name checks.
they
So,
knew. Yeah, they
uh,
knew. Yeah.
um, but by the time I got to be a teenager, I actually I did work at the funeral home when I was 16 and 17. My first job at the funeral home was we also do pet cremations, and was to drive around in a van and go to all the veterinarians that had animals die and pick them up and take them to our crematory. So that was my first job at the funeral home. 17, I was driving flower vans, driving hearses. I was greeting people at the door, working parking lots, that sort of thing. Um, After 17, I was like, you know what? I think I might want to do something else. So started taking some other jobs and just getting different experiences. Wasn't really sure if I wanted to come into funeral service. Graduated from college. And I was like, what is it that I want in a job?
Yeah.
And for me, that was, I don't want to be behind a desk all day. I like being up moving around. I like having some control over what's going on in my day. And I like helping people.
Mhm.
I was like, shoot, that's funeral service. So I ended up coming back to the funeral home.
Yeah.
And doing that. And just because I like the variation of the day, I like working with people,
Mhm.
I like making a difference in people's lives.
That's awesome. Those are my favorite things about working at the library. So if this doesn't work out long term, might find myself in your industry as well. No. But Jay, you want to tell us a little bit about your feelings when you were a teen? Did you know you wanted to do this? And can you talk about your career path a little bit?
Well, like Kevin, I was introduced very, very early to it. My first trip for a funeral service job was riding between the front seats of my parents' van to Warsaw, Indiana at 8 weeks old. So I
Wow.
was always involved. Grew up with a father who worked for funeral homes and had his own trade service embalming for funeral homes, and then back and forth from there. And I was always very interested in it. I always felt there was some meaning to it. and I continued to grow up that way and really took to it. But I didn't want to do it all the time. I had wanted to be a teacher
Okay.
at one point in time, and that's what I went to High Dominican for was education. But I was working nights at the funeral home, uh, answering phones because I wanted a job. But it also put me in the funeral home, and that continued to strengthen how much I wanted to do um, the business because I was very comfortable in it. And like Kevin, it was a job I knew I could do and I could do it really well. And it was something where, like with my job, I'm not answering to anybody but myself and the families, to be honest with you. But I have bosses, my clients, funeral homes. Um, but for the most part, I work for myself and I can be out on the road when I need to be. It's never boring. Let's put it that way. And I'm not sitting behind a desk. I'm not. The nice part about being a train embalmer versus a funeral director is I'm not setting up flowers. I'm not sweeping floors, but
Mhm.
I do take care of my prep rooms and that type of thing. But I really love uh, the aspect of the technical work is just really fascinating to me, and I continue to learn and work with that, and that's a good challenge to me because every case, deceased person that comes to me, it's a challenge. Everybody is different, and they can present in a different way. There's never a textbook example from case to case, so you have to, just like every person and every funeral should be for that person. That's what I do, is care for that person, to me it's giving back. My father taught me that was we're doing this for the family and giving them back their person for a time so they can have their time to say goodbye. And that really resonated with me and why I continue to do it.
Yeah. Your empathy and passion is amazing.
Thank you.
Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about your feelings as a teen? Did you know you wanted to be an archaeologist?
No, I
Yeah.
wanted to be a veterinarian, and I still want to be a veterinarian.
Okay.
So as a
Love
kid,
it.
I always loved animals. I always do. I always will. So as a kid, that's what I wanted to do. I got into archaeology. I was very interested in ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. That kind of sparked my interest. I probably, being a Boy Scout, thoroughly enjoyed camping and looking for things in the woods when I was a kid. So I think that probably laid its hand for me to become an archaeologist as well. And I just thought as I got older, I thought the science was thought archaeologists were cool, and I thought the science was fascinating. So I think I'm just very passionate about history. Mostly ancient history is my passion. Just finding out things, putting the puzzle together, figuring out what people were doing, why they were doing it, where they were living. So to piggyback off of what they said, no matter when anyone passed away, it's they were loved and cared for by someone. So first and foremost, I'm sure with my panelists as well, is respecting the dead. That's what we tell each other. Like if I'm doing an activity for kids, like a dick pit activity, and there's fake or faux bones in there, the first thing I say is that you treat these like it's a real person. Or if I'm doing mummy wrap, treat this mummy like it was someone's loved one. That's why they took all this preparation and care for this individual, because again, someone loved them. So for me, that's first and foremost to make sure that we are respecting the dead, and that's what we're taught in archaeology. For me, I thoroughly enjoyed working in cemeteries. I think working with human remains is very interesting to me. I think it's cool that as an archaeologist, although we do have to have a permit to excavate in cemeteries, it's just fascinating to figure out what people were doing. If there's some had injuries with their bones, what happened, was it war, the disease that shows up in different remains as well. So more of a forensic anthropologist probably or archaeologist deals with bones with flesh on it. We're mainly dealing with skeletal remains as archaeologists that don't specialize in forensics. So for me, like I said, it's just interesting working with. I mean, all aspects of archaeology is interesting to me. It can be boring at times. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation. There's a lot of slow days, very meticulous science. But what comes about from that is enormous, in my opinion, and it can tell the whole story about a culture, a person, a family. So for me, that's very fascinating. You get a lot of questions on what was your, what's the best thing you found, or like or you'll get the question, on what's the most expensive. Like as archaeologists, we're not into selling artifacts. We're into getting the information from the actual artifact to put the puzzle together and to tell that story. So, but in ask that, working in Oklahoma, I found an unmarked burial there. It was very serene where they had laid that person there. It was like on a hill. There were 200 lakes that were made around that area, so it was just very serene and very interesting. So, but maybe one day I'll become a veterinarian. So, I'm getting later on in years, so maybe not. But for me, it was veterinary medicine, and then archaeology came as becoming an adult.
Very cool. And what is your degree in?
My degree is anthropology, and I specialize in archaeology.
Okay. And then Kevin, what is your degree in?
I actually have a bachelor's degree in business.
Okay.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
that's my background.
And then Jay, yours is in teaching, right?
It's actually bachelor's of art with a minor in
Okay.
education,
Right. Awesome.
and then and then an associate's
Very
degree
cool.
from the mortuary school.
So do you find that most people who do work in this industry do go to college and have a degree, or are there opportunities for individuals who don't have a bachelor's degree? Jay, do you want to start? We got you.
Well, in Ohio, you are required to have a bachelor's degree for the state licensing.
Okay.
And then if you want to be an embalmer, if you want to have the double license, so there's two licenses, funeral directing and embalming. I hold both. Kevin has one, just the funeral director. And you can choose that path either way that you would like. I chose to go to embalming school. Mortuary school in Cincinnati is where I went. And then you do another year there, and I received an associate's of science in mortuary science. That doesn't matter as much as just getting the mortuary education, and then you serve a year's apprenticeship under a master embalmer and funeral director. If you want to do just funeral directing, which is an excellent choice as well, you have to have the bachelor's and do a 2-year apprenticeship under a funeral home with a funeral director master, and that's what in Ohio that is their requirements. Other states have lesser requirements, but Ohio is one of the more strict on having a bachelor's degree, and you can have a bachelor's in anything you want. I always suggest somebody find something of interest. If they're going to do it, find something of interest. That's how I ended up with the education, but also the art. And or like Jeff, have something in archaeology if you want, and then you can do mortuary school if you want to become an embalmer or just become a funeral director. And I know a number of people that second, third careers have joined funeral service as a funeral director. Once they had their degree.
Wow. How many mortuary schools are there? Or are there many mortuary schools in Ohio? I should say.
There's one in Ohio.
Just one? Okay. And that you said is in Cincinnati?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, very
Yeah.
interesting. Is that pretty common? Most states just have one?
Not even all states have one.
Wow.
But I was going to say, so most of the funeral directors that come to work for us come from either Cincinnati or Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Pittsburgh has the Pittsburgh Institute for Mortuary Science. They have an online degree so that you can get your bachelor's in anything, but then you can do your coursework online. You do need to travel there for some lab days, but it's largely virtual. So many people choose that path. Cincinnati is very hands-on, and so you're there, you're in the classroom. Those are the two primary places that we get our funeral directors from. And I would say, unlike Jay, I am too squeamish to be an embalmer, and so
I heard you say that earlier, but yeah.
Yeah, for the teens out there, like I can't do that. So I'm too uncomfortable. But so I took the path, which is I have a bachelor's degree, and then I did a 2-year apprenticeship. And so during your apprenticeship, you actually get paid. So I was able to work for those 2 years and become a licensed funeral director. And so there really are two paths in funeral service. In terms of, are you more interested in the arts and the science piece of this? Because truly there is an art to embalming. And I am not an artist either. So in addition to being squeamish, I'm not an artist. So Jay is an artist, and also an embalmer. So he has those skills. And then there's the other side of it, which is the connecting with the family, making the arrangements, overseeing the service, and you're really interacting with the family. Now, in many funeral homes, you're going to be doing both. And so a lot of the smaller funeral homes that may only have, you know, four, three, two, three, four people that work there, you're kind of wearing all of those hats. So you're meeting with the families, making arrangements, but you're also doing the embalming and the cosmetics and the dressing and the hair. At our funeral home, because we have about 42 licensed funeral directors that work for us. We specialize. So we've got people that just love and are excellent at the art and the science of and the preparation side of it. And then also the funeral directors that just love connecting with families. And so we'll in our company we allow people to really do what they love and excel at.
Awesome. We have a question from the teens about mortuary school. So does mortuary school, what do those courses look like? What are some of them? And then is there a final project, like a thesis that you have to finish at the end? So that's a question from our teens.
Deferring to Jay, I'm the first in my family that did not go to mortuary school.
It's changed. Obviously, I've been out of school 25 years now, but they've changed it a little bit. But essentially, you're earning. You can go with an associate's degree and earn the rest of your bachelor's. I earned an associate's degree, and it was 2 levels of chemistry, microbiology, 2 levels of, and I'm talking pre-med kind of style anatomy. There's also then everything from embalming theory and lab work at least so all the schools will teach, whether they have an on-site lab or not, they will teach embalming theory, which is this is the instrument, this is that you use for this. This is, all of the things that can happen. The anatomy also involves all of the sites that we would use for embalming. You have to be very familiar with that. But then it also comes down to mortuary law, ethics, merchandising, as Kevin said, connecting with a family, psychology. It's a wide-ranging program. Pittsburgh has an excellent online program that you do all of those things, essentially like any online college would do, but you do have to go in for some lab work at some point in time, or working at a funeral home on your side. Like Cincinnati has their own lab. I think Pittsburgh is working on one as well, where you can go now there directly. And some of the other schools do have on-site labs or connections with funeral homes that will allow students to come and study there. But the coursework is, it's a mortuary science degree, associates or full bachelor's. So it's intense. We did an associate's degree in a year, when it usually takes 2. So it's a wide variety of things. Like I said, everything from law and ethics to the theory and practice and anatomy.
And a couple newer certifications that they do in these schools. One, most students are walking out as licensed crematory operators.
Okay.
And they're walking out as certified funeral celebrants. And what a celebrant is essentially serving the role of like a minister or something like that actually gets to learn a family story, or get to learn the life story of the person that died, and be able to actually stand in front of a group of people and deliver a funeral service. So those are 2 certifications that have been added into the curriculum over the last several years.
Thanks, Kevin. I forgot about that. Those are excellent addition to that, because there is so much cremation, but also less families going to religious institutions and needing people that can kind of meet in the middle as a funeral director.
When you graduate from that program, do you automatically have your license, or do you have to take a test?
Well, you take the national board
Okay.
exam, and then you do your apprenticeship and you then take a state test, which is, at least on the embalming side, is an embalming test and a funeral director of laws test. So you have to take that at the end of your apprenticeship. And fortunately, OFDA and some other organizations have put together study materials and that type of thing that helps the apprentices prepare for those tests better. But the national board, some of the colleges, mortuary schools require that you pass the national board to graduate. Some offer you to take it after you've graduated from the program. If you want to continue on towards your license, you then take the national board exam, which is a very long day of two giant parts of embalming and funeral directing questions.
Thank you so much. All right, Jeff, I have a couple questions from the teens for you.
Okay.
So how far do you typically travel for your sites, your archaeology sites? Yeah, where do you go? And yeah, what do those look like?
So for CRM, which is called Cultural Resource Management, it can take you all over the country. I worked on over 50 projects in 16 different states multiple times. The farthest I've probably been was maybe Texas or Oklahoma. Part of my career, I'd lived in Florida, and then part of my career, I've lived here in Ohio and sort of traveled around as well. So it kind of just depends. There's a firm here called ASC Group that did a lot of work with, worked for them for about 5+ years. So we would go to PA a lot. We had an office in Harrisburg also. We made it all the way up to Scranton from Columbus. So it just depends on where the projects are or where you're going to go. Anytime there's with cultural resource management and these archaeological firms you work for that are like not a college or a university, anytime the government's using federal money to develop things, we have to come in and we have to survey it to make sure that it's not going to be affecting any sites. If you think about here in Ohio years back, when they put the heliport on the hilltop, there were remains found there that we had to excavate. And generally, without going into all of it, generally, permits, people should know that. But we have to come in and do survey for things of that nature to make sure that there aren't any sensitive sites getting disturbed or damaged. Because when we are excavating, if we're not doing using a magnetometer or ground penetrating radar, that's not my expertise. I've worked along someone doing that, but that's not my expertise. If we're actually physically digging, then we are destroying the site because we're digging things up and we're taking it out. So to short answer to that question, you could end up all over the country. Some people do it differently. For myself, I like to sort of be I never really accepted full-time from one firm just because I like to travel the country and work for different different CRM companies and different archaeological companies. So for me, it gave me the opportunity to go all over the country to do archaeology and work. And it also in doing that, I think it gives you more expertise working in certain regions of the country, not just maybe 2 or 3 states that you sort of focus in where your firm is actually located. So you can be going all over the place. I've never worked outside of this country. Some archaeologists do. I never had that opportunity. Probably would have jumped at it, but it was a lot of travel. I used to call it a lot of hotel living, a lot of bags. You look like a vagabond carrying everything, hotel living. But it's you build a camaraderie with the people you're working with. There's hot days, there's cold days, there's ticks, there's snakes, there's gators. So all that stuff is out there. It's nothing like Indiana Jones. So don't get it confused. It's not like that at all. But you do see see some really cool things doing archaeology. Just being out there for me. Most pointedly, I most times you're with a team, but sometimes you're on a project alone. I like that alone time so you can think about who was there, what they were doing, sort of take yourself back in time and put yourself with what you're looking for. And it may sound a little odd, but I've talked to. I've talked to them before out there, like show me where this stuff is and whatnot. You just kind of get in your head and to put that puzzle together to figure out again what they were doing. So you could travel all over the place doing archaeology if you want.
Amazing. So that leads us into our next question. What are some different sub-careers you can do as an archaeologist? I guess, do most archaeologists work for firms? Do they work, are you employed as a contractor? What does that look like?
So a little bit of both. You can work for a firm. You can be a subcontractor and sort of subcontract yourself out. You can work in government. You can work in tribal government, state and local government. You can work in colleges and universities. You can work in the nonprofit sector. A lot of us do teach. So you can go into that if you're wanting to teach like in a middle school, or you can do what I did. So for myself, the reason why I started Archaeology Can You Dig It? I had a background in education. Like I did a lot of that work in here, Columbus Rec, Columbus Public Schools. And so basically I had that a lot of museums in Ohio. But for myself, I started Archaeology Can You Dig It? Because I was the only African-American in my college at the time with this degree. What I was told is I was the first one that specialized in archaeology. There was one that did anthropology, but specialized in archaeology. I was told that I was the first. So I just knew that I wanted to start an outreach youth program because archaeology and culture is for everybody. Everybody's culture is very important. So for me, that's why this outreach program developed. So you can do that. You can start a business doing it once you have your degree. So those different sections you can work in. It's a variety of things. Anthropology is sort of, there's 4 disciplines. There's bio, anthro, there's linguistics, there's cultural, and then there's archaeology. And there's some things that like bio is like forensics. So there's a lot of things that anthropology lends itself to. So there's a variety of things. Sometimes you have to get a little bit creative with anthropology, but it lends itself because you're dealing with people. So it's a nice skill and trait to have. It's not probably for everybody. You're probably not going to become a millionaire being an archaeologist, but you'll get paid in other ways. And if you do start up a business, then you can decide, like they also said, your days are freed up. You have time to do what you need to do, and you can name your price. Whatever you can determine what your product that you're selling is worth. So that's very enjoyable. So there's a variety of ways of things you can do with anthropology and also specialize in archaeology as well.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, back to Jay. Let's see, what do you think are some important skills or characteristics for people working in this industry?
Compassion, empathy,
Mm-hmm.
strong stomach.
Yeah.
Not just because of my work, the hands-on,
Mm-hmm.
but even working, like Kevin said, he's squeamish working in the prep room. I'm squeamish working with a family.
Mm-hmm.
I never had enough practice at it. I did it, but it was difficult for me. And I love working a good service. I don't mind going and working a service, but meeting with the families can be you have to be very organized, especially when you're a director. Um, Details. Um, I wanted, Jeff talks about finding people in a gravesite. When I bury people, I'm thinking about the archaeologist in 500 years that will hopefully find my people. You know what I mean? And making sure that they're like, well, this guy sucked, So it's compassion, and caring for people, and it can be very hard. And you have to be able to take care of yourself too, because you are dealing with such a wide variety of emotions that are not your own, in helping people uh, make the arrangements, go through what they're doing at the end of someone's life, and that's where uh, having some customer service helps, because while we're not ringing stuff up, you still need to be able to handle how to talk with people about pricing, about proceeding on with giving them a list of the things that they need to bring you, whether insurance, paperwork, or clothing. You have to be organized and ready to deal with whatever, light on your feet, because you're going to have to deal with a number of different issues coming your way just for one case, and you might have 5 cases in a week that you're responsible for.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Kevin, do you have anything to add to that about important skills or characteristics?
Compassion, empathy, attention to detail is a big one. That's actually where I struggled the most. My attention to detail is not always great, so I often would misspell something in an obituary or, yeah, little things like that don't seem like a big deal, but when you are grieving and you're in and we don't get do-overs in funeral service. We get one chance to do it right, because it's not like we can be like, oh, screw that up. Can we reschedule this and do this again? No, we get one chance at doing this right. So attention to detail is definitely a big component of it. Social skills, um, being able to have, tough conversations. Um, and but the reward there is that there are very few professions in life where at the end of doing a good job that you get a hug, and we get a lot of hugs. And so it's watching someone transform, from the day they come in to start planning this, and then seeing how their emotional state changes after the funeral service is just a very rewarding experience. Um, so yeah, compassion, social skill, or sociability, being able to connect with people, having that empathy, and then attention to detail are the big ones.
Thank you so much. We've got, leading off that, we've got a tough question from our teens at Whetstone. How does your work in this industry affect the way you view your own death or loved one's death, or death in general? You can add.
It doesn't change your experience when someone you love dies. We are all human. So what we do, we still feel the same emotions that everyone else does, when we lose someone that's close to us and that we love. And so, yeah, we're all just human. So we don't become desensitized to our own experiences and our own feelings. I think there is, in a way, you can learn how to sit with someone else's feelings and have empathy there without taking it all on, which is an important skill to learn, so that because you want to be there, you want to support, you want to show that you care, you want to support them, but you also don't want to completely carry all of those feelings yourself, because that creates burnout and can be overwhelming. But in terms of experiencing death, someone close to you, we are just like everyone else. Has it viewed my own death? I mean, I've got all my plans for what happens for my funeral in a drawer. Talking about death does not make it happen any faster than talking about winning the lottery will help you win the lottery. So I think those conversations are good to have, and just say, hey, this is what I want. Yeah. That probably makes me a little bit different at having my funeral arrangements done well, I'm 42 now, but I've had them in a drawer since I was 30.
Wow. Yeah, we're very prepared, which is great. But yeah, I'm sure that you are, especially growing up with your father was a funeral director as well. Just very comfortable in the industry, which is great. How about you, Jeff? You dig up bones. How does that affect your
that was a great question. Whetstone, that was a great question.
Yeah,
so I want to be mummified. No, I would actually be mummified, absolutely. Yeah. But it's just it really doesn't. It's fascinating. It's fascinating again, like reading the body, reading the remains, the bones of someone. So just take care of me. Like send me to Kevin and Jay, and let them take care of me when my last day arrives, and just show me some love and make me look good. But all seriousness, it doesn't. We're all going to go. We're not here forever. So you do have to be prepared for that. You can't call your day. No one really knows. Even if someone is given a certain amount to live, you could outlive it. It could be shorter. So we're all here to do the best we can do while we're here. And then when it's our time to move on, then someone else takes our place or moves in, does what we were doing, and that's just that's just what it is to me. I'm not afraid of death, I guess. I don't think anyone really wants to die a violent death, but I'm not afraid of it because I know it's coming. So just take care of me. My brother wants to be cremated. I would rather, again, be mummified or buried. Everyone has their preference as to how they want to go, but I agree with again, my panelists, you should have a plan and know that it's coming, and and trust in someone who's going to take care of your loved one, just like we all mentioned. Just because we're all somebody, so you want that to show when you can no longer speak for yourself. You want individuals like Kevin and Jay to let you speak, even though you can't speak for yourself, by the way that you're prepared and the way that you look when when your family and friends, and maybe even some people that hate you, are coming to see you at your funeral. Glad that you're gone. So for me, it doesn't change anything at all. Just if anything, it helps me again when I'm dealing with the remains. It just is it's embedded in my mind to treat them right and measure it right. Do everything you need to do, excavate it correctly, because again, that was someone's loved one, and they didn't ask to be. On our end, they most times, unless you're, we were working in a cemetery in Harrisburg, PA, and so the family had sold their plot of land to a larger company. So their remaining family members had to be sort of removed out of their family farm grave cemetery. So it just hits home. A lot of times they're not asking to be taken out. Sometimes they have to be. So if you have to be the one that is involved in excavating human remains, and do it the right way and be ethical and compassionate and have empathy as well, just know that was somebody when they're around.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Let's see. This is an interesting question. Are there any ethical dilemmas you've faced in your work? And if so, how did you handle them? Jay or Kevin?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think an important thing to really understand when it comes to people believe the same thing. No two people are going to grieve and experience that the same way. And what may not be for you might be for somebody else. So my favorite story to tell about this is that I have a funeral director friend. She's in Wyoming, and she called me and told me that she said she was sitting with the family, and this gentleman was a huge hunter, really, really big into hunting. And the family wanted to preserve his trigger finger. So they wanted his trigger finger removed and preserved.
Wow.
So that they could put it with other hunting memorabilia in a shadow box. Wow. And I was like, okay. My thought process when it comes to special requests like this is, one, is it legal? And two, can we make it happen? In this case, there's not a law against this, but there's liability concerns with lawyers and things like that. So I was like, okay, well, I think number one, you need to have some release form signed from the family that they're not going to hold you accountable for, whatever happens. Two, I would not remove the finger. If the family has someone that would do that or wants to do that, they're welcome to do that. And then three is like, okay, how are we going to preserve this finger? Embalming's only temporary. My mind, because I'm from the city, I was like, if you've ever been to one of those bodies exhibits where they've plasticized the tissue, I was like, maybe there's a way to do that. And she was like, well, okay, you gave me some food for thought. And so I followed up there. Like, so when it ended up happening, she goes, well, we had him sign some paperwork. The son and grandson came in. They had a pair of bolt cutters and they cut his finger off. And they had a taxidermist that was willing to preserve the finger. And I was like, oh, taxidermy, I'm not a hunter. I never crossed my mind. Yeah. And the family has it. They are just so happy and pleased with everything that happened. And most people, when I tell the story, are completely cringing. Like, oh my gosh, how could you ever do that? But that's what that family needed. And so, like, I'm not here to make decisions about what's best for families. As long as it's legal, as long as we make it happen, we'll help facilitate making that happen. And so, yeah, that's my fun ethics question as to, okay, how do we make judgments about what people need? And that family needed that, and they're super happy.
Yeah. Your jobs have to intersect with religious and cultural traditions in very unique and special ways. So yeah, that's incredible that you can do that work. Let's see. This is Jeff, for you. Do you work alone or as part of a team? You talked about this a little bit, but what kinds of people do you collaborate with regularly? You were mentioning a few different other professions that you work with. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Generally, you're going to work with a team. You have an archaeological crew. You have a lot of ground to cover generally, or if it's a phase 3, there's a lot of dirt to move. For example, when you go to college, most people have an internship. Our internship is basically a field school. So ours at the time, I went to graduate from University of West Florida. At the time in 2002, I think it was the longest in the country. It was 16 weeks, 13 weeks. I'm sorry, 13 weeks. So you generally are working with a crew. Like if the times that I've been by myself, it's like a small day project that you're sort of working on by yourself. Now you can be out in the field with your crew and like you may be off in another area by yourself, but generally you're working with a crew of people to get the job done. Again, you have to move a lot of dirt. For myself, I obviously archaeology is a small knit community. So I obviously talk to a lot of archaeology friends that I have, marine and terrestrial. So artists also, anybody for myself, educators and like these two gentlemen, people who are in business, because I'm not a business major. I just kind of started this and did it for the amount of time that I've been doing it, but try to just gain knowledge from individuals like that. And just, to be perfectly honest, is you're helping yourself out by surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, because you can learn from them. You can bounce ideas off of them. So generally for me, I guess the short answer is any scientists I'm generally gravitating toward, or anybody who's in education or anything of that nature for myself.
Thank you so much. How about you, Jay? It seems like you mostly work, well, alone, but then as part of a larger team. But is there anyone in the prep room with you, or is it just you?
I have an assistant who helps
Okay.
me, like licensee, who
Yeah.
works opposite days or helps me. We work together on
Sure.
different things. I've had as many as 3 employees over the last 13 years, but most of the time it is just myself. But I am working. I am working for the funeral home
Mhm.
and the families that they're serving. So, but I'm working as a team with the funeral home, informing them when we have issues, say someone who has had an accident and has gone to the coroner's office, and I'm letting them know what they need to know to help with the family,
Mhm.
uh, deal with things, but also plan if a viewing will be difficult, or even available at all, if it's been that tragic. But yeah, most of the time it's myself and some podcasts or some music or something in my ears, and uh, just trying to, like I said, work for the best for the funeral home, because I'm also I'm trying to show that my good skills, but also make the funeral home be able to give the family back their person in the best condition and viewing possible.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you and Kevin from the teens. Do you have to get a cosmetology license to be able to do cosmetics work for a funeral? So to do like makeup and hair, do you need a license, or who does that? Yeah, can you tell us about that?
I would say most of the funeral homes, when it's the embalmer or the funeral directors, are doing their own makeup, and they do not have to have a cosmetology license. That all falls within the preparation work. Now, there are a couple funeral homes that I've worked with that did have licensed cosmeticians come in. When I worked with Deal Whitaker, and one of my other firms right now, they have a licensed cosmetologist that comes in, and that person does both the hair and the makeup. They prefer to do it that way, and that's fine. And it actually gives a little bit more professional work. And I have a few funeral directors that I've worked with that did have cosmetology or even hairdressing licenses before they were um, funeral directors. That's kind of how they found their way to funeral directing, even in one case. But
Yeah.
you don't have to have a license to do it. Some funeral homes do have outside people that they trust to do it, but most of the time they're licensed in some way. I know that Scheddinger's always had a licensed hairdresser that came in to do all of the ladies' hair and even cut my hair when I was a kid. You know, we'd come down to the prep room and Judy would cut all the guys' hair on the Sundays or something. Um, and a couple other funeral homes that I work with, they have hairdressers that come in to do all the ladies' hair and the men's too if they need it. But for the most part, the funeral director can do it.
Mhm.
I'm sure they're probably asking if they some I have a few people that are interested. My niece was interested at one time to be a cosmetologist for that, and I told her she finished cosmetology school, and some funeral homes, like I said, will employ them part time. It's be more part time. Let's just put it that way, but they do that.
Yeah, I would say it's not a requirement. It's a hard there's a lot of people that have those degrees that try to get into funeral service. I will just tell you that it's a very small amount of business that you'd be trying to get after. And as Jay mentioned, Judy worked for us, I think, for 35 years. So we're not having high turnover in for people doing that specific job. And we have right now, the person that took over for Judy, she's a licensed funeral director. She also is a licensed hairstylist, cosmetist. So there's not a lot of demand in funeral service for it because funeral directors can do it. And there's not many funeral homes that are willing to also bring in that outside because it's additional cost for them. And when the licensed funeral directors can do it.
Thank you so much. The teens also want to know, have you ever had to plan a funeral for an animal or a pet?
Yes. So we have we've had a grief therapy dog program for, oh gosh, probably like 12 years now, 13 years. And our first therapy dog that would go and assist or like basically go to funerals and be there to provide comfort to families. When she died, we had a funeral for her. And so she actually made the front page of the newspaper when newspapers were still a thing. And so yeah, Tara, we did a funeral for her. We also do pet cremation for families. So when people lose a pet, we do cremation for their animals and return their ashes to the family. Um, and we serve about 2 pet families for every 1 human family. So we serve probably around 6,000 pet families a year who have lost a pet.
Makes sense.
And also, I've had to do pet funerals for my own kids when they've lost a pet. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
imagine.
I
Yeah,
make them do full-blown funerals for our pets.
yeah, yeah. I bet Tara's funeral was truly beautiful.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Jay, the teens want to know what kind of music or podcasts you listen to while you are working.
It's a wide variety.
Yeah.
I listen to books. Like on my weekends I enjoy just like a goofy kind of just not a great book, just that something that helps keep my mind off of it. But I listen to a lot of stuff, interview stuff, Mark Maron, NPR, those types of interview type things. Music is a wide variety. I grew up in the early 90s, so it's a variety of everything you can think of that way. Just something to keep my mind. It helps me concentrate on what I'm doing and taking off some of the weight just to keep me going, especially when the days get really long. And sometimes I just have a conversation with someone on the phone, to help as well. But usually I try not to do that. It's more just listening and keeping out of my own head. A lot of interviews.
Thank you so much. We are nearing the end here. I'd love to know, what is your most memorable moment from your career as a trade embalmer?
Mm. Um, there's been some good things, but actually one of my most memorable was when I was working for the livery service as a removal driver, and I went to a house middle of the night, and it was an older man by himself, and it was his wife. They'd been married over 55 years. And my partner and I went in, uh, got her ready, but he wanted to follow us out. And we just stood at the back of the van. I mean, this is 90-year-old man. And we just stood at the back of the van with the door open, and he just stood there and he was crying. And I took his hand and I just held his hand. And I mean, this would have been 1999.
Yeah.
So all these years later, I still think about that, standing there holding that old man's hand while he cried, and just didn't say a word. Just let him be there with her for a little bit longer. Got to see him at the funeral home a couple days later, and 2 years later, I had the honor of picking him up, and by then I was a licensed funeral director or embalmer, and I embalmed him for the funeral home. And so, but he just didn't have anybody, and it was kind of, one of those things I don't forget about that.
Yeah. Supporting grieving families is definitely amazing.
Yeah. And then the other day, a friend of mine called me. I took care of his nephew,
Wow.
who'd been killed, and I was able to do some reconstruction work and everything. And Ben texted me and just said, hey man, thank you. And I said, dude, I've taken care of a number of his family over the years, and just that makes you feel good. But I'm still sad for Ben's family because they've lost a lot of people here. But to be able to give him back this young man and say, here you go, that's a good feeling.
Yeah. Helping people at some of the worst times of their lives.
Mhm.
How about Jeff? Do you have a most memorable moment from your career, or maybe the coolest thing you've found, or yeah.
Yeah, two quick things. Again, like I mentioned before, discovering the unmarked burial in Oklahoma for me that'll probably stick with me for my entire life. That was very interesting to me, and even more so closer to home here. Again, the Hilltop area, there was a mental hospital that if we're from here, we knew about that. So when we worked in that particular cemetery, we excavated a woman, and so I was not the curator at this particular firm. A friend of mine that has since passed away. So when he laid her body out, her remains out on the table, she had evidence of a lobotomy. So you just hope that someone didn't, a loved one didn't just leave her there and forget her, but she had her wedding ring on. So she was, it was all her remains, and she had her wedding ring on. It just reminds you of till death do us part. So I think that'll probably stick with me forever as well. I just hope her family didn't just leave her there. Obviously, that was a long time ago. Things were looked at differently during that time period with mental illness. So those two things for me, I don't think will ever leave me.
Thank you. How about Kevin? Do you have a memorable moment you want to share?
Sure. There's lots of moments like Jay shared when you're just make a real connection with someone and help them through a really difficult time. I would say the probably the coolest thing I ever got to do was when John Glenn died. We took care of John Glenn. And so I got to help at his funeral service. I was arm's length from Joe Biden because he was one of the speakers there, but I actually drove the hearse for John Glenn at the funeral service. And so I was following marching Marines from the State House all the way to Mershon Auditorium at OSU. And that took about 45 minutes. And it was just me and John Glenn in the car. And so that was a pretty special moment for, our first American in space. And one of the greatest aviators we've ever had, the longest serving state senator, or longest serving senator for the state of Ohio, and just a true American hero to be able to be a part of that.
Thank you so much, guys. Any last minute advice for our teens before we jump off? I mean, you guys have been great, so thank you so much.
If you want to get involved, if you're thinking about it, reach out to a funeral home. Just shadow, show up, see if hey, can I just work a funeral and help set flowers, open doors for people. Just get exposed to figure out if you might want to do it. I really suggest getting some experience in it before going and getting your degree and chasing that dream. Make sure it's really for you before you go do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And are you as as a president of a funeral home, are you used to people reaching out to you to come observe and shadow? Is that pretty?
Oh, yeah, we get probably 1 month.
Wow.
So.
Okay. That's awesome.
I would say visit, talk to your local archaeologist, visit museums around, visit sites. We just got some sites here that were labeled as, important to the world now, world UNESCO sites here. The mounds here, so they're within reach. Go check them out. Museums again. Join OAC, join Society of American Archaeology, all that stuff. It's out there, and just go for it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much.
Um,
We'll go ahead and wrap it up.
can,
And we appreciate you. And
Ex-
thank you, teens. You
excuse
guys had some great questions.
We got a question?
Yes,
Oh.
I do.
Yeah.
I was wondering, was this just like the meeting for us to go to like a funeral home just to get into the thing or something? I don't know.
So why don't you put the question in the chat, and then I can answer it there.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Jeff, if I wasn't in funeral service, I always said I'd be a history professor. I love history, so your passions are mine.
Thank you. Yep, that's you still should do it. I'm gonna become a vet at one day also. So it's cool, man. What you guys do is awesome too, man. I used to have a friend, and he's since passed away, but a friend in Pensacola, his family had a funeral home. It was one of the first African American funeral homes, and they did a lot of work for a lot of years. So I was fascinated by the things he talked to us about, and we got to go in there and visit and everything. So it's a fascinating science what you two do.
Yeah, it truly is. And it feels like you just touch so many different parts of, someone's life. And, you do so many different things as a funeral director and an embalmer.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. It was awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
See y'all later.
Jeff, I'll see you around.
Okay, see you.
Thank you. Jay, Kevin, hopefully I won't see you for a very long time.
I'm okay with that.
That's all right.
See you
All
later.
right.
Thank you.